So we started off with just a slide with the three of us in front of computers at different eras. And you'll notice one of them happens to be in black and white, which you'll never guess who.
They didn't have color film back then.
Yeah.
Was a thing.
Funny how that is. I mean, I think I've got a dot matrix technically, and I'm probably on a
Mine's
PBS.
definitely a dot matrix.
Yeah, and there's like my modem is there because that was my life for part of my childhood.
Mine's a bunch of speakers because I couldn't actually find any pictures from me in front of a computer back in the day.
They took up whole rooms back then.
That's on the next slide.
Yeah. So, Larry, what are you going?
Okay, so this is like back when I was in high school. There's my high school yearbook photo. I also included a picture of Valerie, my then girlfriend and now wife, from the computer club at Carnegie Mellon because, well, of course, that's what you do when you're in college and you're a complete computer nerd, is you join the computer club. Me as a rhinestone cowboy from my high school yearbook. And the bottom left was actually the terminal that we used when I started programming. It's not me in the picture, because again, no pictures of me with a computer, but that's actually the teletypewriter that we used in the computer lab at my high school. And that was literally how I started programming back in 1976, 77 or so. So
when Larry first shared these photos as we were preparing this, he's like, and then this one was in 1984 and this one's 19 whatever. And I'm like, well, I actually have something that I was doing in 1984. And let me just say, I called it.
You did.
Like, I was quite impressed with myself.
You really did.
So we had we had some overlap in our different eras.
Her handwriting was better than mine anyway.
Well, yeah.
Okay, badges. I have lots of badges because I've been here for a really long time. The one on the left is the one that I get the most comments about typically, because they're like, wait, you were a contractor? Like, read the badge carefully. That's actually the badge that I had when I was at IBM in Austin. I used to commute from Seattle to Austin, Texas in the late 1980s to work on MS-DOS LAN Manager. And because I was at IBM Austin, I had a badge. And I'm technically supposed to have turned it in. And well, oops. Oh dear. The one on the right is actually one of my all-time favorites, because the reaction I always get with that is that actually you? And the answer is yes, it is. That was me in 1988 or so when they got badges. And a whole bunch of us were like, we don't need, no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna say it. Badges are a mark of corporate culture authority. We were not going to do this. So a bunch of us put on fright wigs or big glasses with funky noses like the Groucho Marx nose, all of this. I grayed my hair, I dyed my hair gray, I shaved off my beard, and I went in for my photo. Now everybody else with the fright wigs and everything, the photographer took one look at them and said, nah, take it off. And they all had it taken off. Well, either I was just clever or he couldn't figure out how to get me to take the gray out of my hair, but I got a badge with that. And yeah, and that's signed DOS Vader. Because Danny Glasser, guy across the hall from me, Danny was calling me DOS Vader because I was the only person at Microsoft really at the time who really understood the internals of MS-DOS, because I was working on the MS-DOS version of the LAN Manager product. And so that was like my shtick. I was DOS Vader for a while, so I signed my card DOS Vader. I used that card for about 10 years until somebody noticed it. Literally took them 10 years to find out.
Did the hair catch up?
No, I just
do they notice what? Do they notice that your hair wasn't gray? Or do they notice the autograph?
No, they didn't. What happened, actually, okay, sorry,
Like
I wasn't going to go in.
What was the thing that got ratted out?
I joined Microsoft Research, and the admin decided to get new cards printed for everybody. So it didn't say systems, it says advanced technology. And she took one look at that and she said, that's Dov Harrell's card. That's not you. I said, no, that's me. Nope, that's not you. No, it's me. That's my picture. No, it can't be. And we went around like that for 6 weeks until she finally turned my badge off. And I went in through the front door for about 3 weeks more than that, because I wasn't gonna
Let that happen.
let that get in my way. And eventually my family came to visit and I wanted to show them the office. And I could get in because it was a weekend, so I had to go down to security, get a new badge. And fortunately, they let me keep my old badge.
And by this time, they had color printing. So.
And by this time, yes, we had actually photos in color and everything. It was great. So.
Speaking of photos in color.
Speaking of photos in color, LAN Manager 1.0. Ray Norda, head of Novell NetWare, our arch enemies. Ray compared our transport strategy to driving to the 7-Eleven in an 18-wheeler just to get a slushie. Now, LAN Manager was run by a guy by the name of Brian Valentine, and Brian was never one to back down from a challenge. And so the entire LAN Manager team got into an 18-wheeler. We drove to the 7-Eleven over on Northeast 51st and 148th, and we all got slushies. One of the things I love about this photo is actually some of the people in this photo. You've got Paul Moritz, who is the head of VMware, or became the head of VMware, Rob Glazer, Real Networks, Bob Moglia, Snowflake, Eric Rutter, who was this advisor to Bill Gates for many, many years, and is now running an AI startup out of Bellevue. The number of luminaries in this one shot is like extraordinary, the number of people who came out of that organization.
You know, I ran a half marathon once, and Rudder was a minute and a half faster than me, and it just pissed me off so much. Like minute and a half.
Eric was really good at getting people mad at him. He really was. It was a gift he had. He was in the office next to mine for many years, and yeah. I respected the hell out of him. I always have and still do, but
Ran's fast.
yeah.
All right, so the next section is, we split it up into separate slides because of the monitors, but each of us has like, okay, we had a long career, we did a lot of things, working a lot of products, have some stories, but like sometimes there's these moments that kind of stick out. They're like, it was just a thing that you're like really proud of. So each of us has just one of those that we're gonna say. And so mine is this. This is the Snipping Tool in Windows 10. And it's the dropdown showing the time delay feature, because I'm one of two people that is the reason that this feature exists in the Snipping Tool in Windows 10. I did not work on it whatsoever. And the story is that a friend of mine in the Windows team at the time, Oren, just found the source and he wanted it for himself. So he just made a copy of the XE, added the feature, and then every PM in the team was like, oh, I need this for my specs or whatever. So we all just started like sharing around random XEs, because you know that's a really good thing to do. And it was so freaking useful. And it was one of those things where like, our customers need this. This is silly. So I went through this process to like get approval and dealt with all the politics. Oh, it has to be localized. It has to be tested. It has to be validated. I'm like, this feature did not take that much validation, but managed to get all that happen. And then when I think it was The Verge did their top 10 favorite features of Windows 10, this was on it. And so when I look back, I'm like, I worked on a bunch of different products, but like that little tiny thing where just because I cared, just because I wanted it, and I was willing to just deal with some of the political stuff, so Oren and I were able to get that feature shipped. And so that's my small moment of pride. And then yours.
Mine is, as everybody recognizes, this is what is known as some old game. This is the pinball game that came with Windows 95. It continued in Windows for quite a while. It finally, I think Windows XP, I think was the last version to have it. I remember it was Windows 2000 days. You'd kick off a build, and it's like, oh, I gotta, pass some time, wait for the build to finish, play some pinball. And then I noticed, I had Task Manager up because you're, keeping track of what's going on. That pinball was like consuming 100% CPU. And it's like, well, that's slowing down my build, isn't it? And I'm like, okay, I really do like playing pinball, but I also do like getting my compiles to get done faster. So I dug in. It turns out, so like I built it. There was a debug flag to turn on a frame rate counter. So I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll turn on the frame rate counter. It printed 3 asterisks because the number was so big. It was running, so I had to actually log the actual. It was running at 1 million frames per second. Because back in the day, on a little Windows 95 machine running at like 4 megahertz or whatever that thing. No, it didn't run at 4, but it ran at like 20 megahertz. That thing struggled to run 30 frames a second. And so it never even occurred to them to like frame rate limit this thing. It's like, are you gonna frame rate limit your turtle? No, you just let that turtle go as fast as he can. In the meantime, we have like quad proc and all this stuff. And so the thing still was like, running full throttle. And so it was running like, but those graphics were mega smooth. Like a million frames a second, like that physics was perfect. And so
a million frames a second, that ought to be enough for anybody.
A million frames a second should be enough for anyone. I decided, I'm like, okay, what is the highest reasonable frame rate? And I picked 100 because it's like, you know what, after 100, can you whatever. It's like below the threshold of human reaction time. It's faster than it's about as fast as those monitors refresh. So I put in a frame rate cap of 100, fired up pinball, then the CPU dropped to like 1%. And I just like, okay, and this was before we had to do paperwork. So I was just like, I just get a friend to say, look, I made it, so watch, see? And he's like, oh, that's sweet. And so in it went, pinball no longer took 100% of your CPU. You could play pinball while running a build, and your build would still finish in about 99% of the same time as it would if you weren't playing pinball and were like doing something even stupider.
Excellent.
So this one's a really tiny little thing, but we shipped Windows 7 with a brand new volume control. Sorry, Windows Vista with a new volume control. And in Windows 7, I got ownership of the control. And at the time, one of the major annoyances was if you ever resized the windows, it would flicker. It flickered back and forth. And it was just so annoying that it was flickering. We got bugs from customers saying, you resize the volume control. Woo, yay, that's cool. And it flickers. I spent weeks chasing this down. Ended up getting one of the user developers to help me, and we spent hours debugging it. And we finally realized that it's because the frame control that draws the little bitty outline is technically a button. It's a button style. And buttons repaint themselves whenever you resize them. So I quickly replaced that with a custom control that didn't repaint itself and poof, smooth slowly. And it's this tiny little thing, and it is the tiny little things. I am still, 15 years, 18 years later, inordinately proud that SoundVol, which it's in the product, but you can't even get to the UI, but you can resize it. And it smoothly scrolls and it doesn't flicker. And it's still, we were thinking about what things you're proud of. And I'm like, I've done a lot of things, but you know what? That may be the thing I'm the proudest of. And it's really stupid, but what the heck?
I think that's what makes it beautiful. Like, I just love this. Like, anytime you work on a product that's used by millions of users, oh no, only 0.01% of people ever use it. It's a lot of people. So, all right.
I do like how, all of our proudest moments are from small things. Like, we're not proud of like the big thing that we did. No. It's this tiny little thing that really, really annoyed me.
Or the things that like involve our day job, typically. I mean,
I didn't work on it.
Yeah,
exactly.
But it's like, this really bothers me. I can fix it. I feel so much better.
Yeah.
Speaking of bigger products.
Yes. Oh, so this is the Windows 95. So this was this is the original ship gift, or the thank you gift for all the people who attended the Windows 95 launch. You got a tote bag that had a little start logo, Microsoft Windows 95. Inside it was a box labeled Windows 95 Special Edition. Now you might wonder, what makes this thing so special? And the answer is there's absolutely nothing special about the Windows 95 Special Edition.
It has the word special on it. That makes it special.
Except that the box is special. The product inside is a standard copy of Windows 95. I believe it's Windows 95 Upgrade. They couldn't even spring for the real thing. Let's see. Yes, it's the Upgrade Edition on a CD, because you didn't want to put 13 floppies in here. But yes, the only thing special in it is the fact that it says special on the box. I learned this from other people who was like, ooh, special edition, and they tore it open, and they're like looking for the Cracker Jack toy inside the box. And they're like, there's nothing,
The
there's
VHS
nothing
video.
in here. Like, what's so special? And then eventually word gets out, there's nothing special. It's just the box. Yes, I also have, that was a thud that's going to totally ruin the recording. I have a ticket to the Windows 95 launch, never used, as well as the entry badge. No, this is the, oh, no, I'm sorry. This is a ticket to the after party. It says, please join Bill Gates and the Windows development team for a special presentation at 6 p.m. main tent sports field. So the story behind this was that the plan for the event was for the whole team. If you've watched the video, you know at the very end, they drop the curtain at the back of the tent, and the entire product team is standing on bleachers, wearing the T-shirts in the 4 Windows colors, all cheering. That was the plan. However, they also said that, you know, we'll also have a lottery, and a select number of members of the team will be given tickets so you can actually attend the event in the tent instead of being stuck standing behind a curtain for 30 minutes trying to be as quiet as possible because it was supposed to be a surprise. And I happened to be one of the winners of the lottery. And one of my coworkers was like, oh man, I really wanted that, you know. And I said, you know what? You can have my ticket. So I gave her my ticket. And then we were all staging backstage, getting ready to be led up onto the bleachers with very clear instructions to be as quiet as possible. We were not as quiet as possible. And I saw her, and she handed me my ticket back. And I said, what happened? And she said, I was, you know, getting ready to go into the tent, and then I realized I belong here with the rest of the team. Oh. And so I have an unused ticket to the Windows 95 launch.
That's very nice.
I believe the archives has other unused tickets to the Windows 95 launch, but I don't know if they were from people who forewent their ticket, or they were just like spares, or they were forgeries. Speaking of forgeries, so one of the members of the Windows 95 team, he left the group shortly before the product completed. He went to another team. He was not invited to the launch festivities. And he was a little grumpy about it. Because it's like, dude, I was on your team for years. Like this product, the product before that, the product before that, the product before that, like all the way back to Windows 1. And so he was kind of grumpy that he didn't get invited to the Windows 95 launch. It just so happens that his new team worked on extremely high quality printing. And so they decided, they said, you know what? We're going to make sure you get to go to the Windows 95 launch. And so as they were building the event, they would, you know, send out scouts. They'd look around. It's like, oh, okay. And they just spot the security badges, you know, the backstage passes that everybody had. It's like, that's the one that gets you into the main stage area. Okay, and they'd like surreptitiously, like, you know, get really good looks at it. I don't know if they had digital cameras back then, but they would figure out, and then they would go back and like do mock-ups of them. And then they would print them out, and it's like, yes, now I have a, you know, backstage pass for the setup. And then but it's like, that's not the end, right? It's like, we're gonna look around. It's like, oh, hang on, I see a new one. And they would go and scope that out. And eventually they had amassed a copy of every possible backstage pass, front stage pass, side stage pass, upside down pass that existed. But even on launch day, they didn't give up. They were there and they'd be like, hey, we overheard somebody coming in, you know, getting their ticket checked, and the ticket taker says like, oh, you have a yellow star sticker on your badge. You get one of these too. And so they're like, yellow star. Hey everybody, we need yellow stars, get the yellow stars. Even on launch day, they were still working to like die with the most toys. Like have all possible badges to every possible Windows 95 launch related event. My coworker, he got to go to the launch.
All right, so skipping ahead in time a little bit, blogs were like a thing back in the day.
21st century.
I know, yes, this millennia, catching up in time a little. And so as we were just kind of putting some of the assets and content together, this is the very first post on the old new thing that I could find. And this was in the era, just to be clear, I mean, maybe this room knows, but not everyone does. Blogs were like weird and new because the idea of, they were live journals, they were about personal lives. The idea of doing something about work didn't make sense. And yet all these people at Microsoft were doing it to the point that the WAG-Ed who did PR for Microsoft at the time was freaking out.
Oh, gosh.
And I don't know, do you want to tell more about it? I just love the last sentence.
Yeah, so first of all, this is not what it looked like back then because the blogs were hosted originally, were not even hosted on a Microsoft account. They were hosted on weblogs.asp.net. And so that's why the tagline for my blog is not actually a .NET blog, because it was on a site dedicated to .NET bloggers, and here I am showing up talking about Win32, and they're like, "What are you doing here? Get out of here!" So this apparently is my very first post, and it ends. It took the form of a short Q&A, and it ends with, I can't even read it, but it's like, "Are all your posts going to be like this?" And it's like, "I don't know. I'm new at this."
So there's the beginning story. And actually, blogging is how Larry and I worked together beforehand, but blogging is how Raymond and I met, because in the era when random people at Microsoft were starting to blog, we were all like, how do you guys do this? Why don't we, what does this work?
Ragnar Edstrom actually had training for Microsoft bloggers where they talked about like the do's and don'ts of blogging. And one of the things actually, honestly, to this day, the core rule was blog smart. That was really like the only restriction they said was, don't be stupid with what you post.
However, that's what Frank would tell us.
That's what Frank would
But we had to put, as is with no warranties. So every blog, hey, at least it was only a few words.
I know.
Instead of like, I was rather impressed at the time.
But
so then, a few months after that, I'd been blogging personally and really enjoying it. It was actually, to the earlier discussion we were having before this started, how do you have community at a big company? Yeah. And blogging was one of those ways where we all started to cross-pollinate and get to know people through different things. I blogged a lot about Exchange and Outlook at the time, because that's what I worked on. And in 2003, but then into 2004, I was like, hey, we should create a blog for the Exchange product to talk to our customers directly so that we don't have to go through all these other layers, because there was news groups, but you know, it's 2004, like there wasn't a lot else. And so
this was back in the era when the only way product teams communicated was through press releases.
Yeah.
Or conferences. That was and we just wanted to be able to talk to our customers more directly. As an IT-facing product, it was a little safer than some others.
And for Exchange, actually, it made so much sense because the Exchange product was profoundly customer-facing, because we had customers on site in the early days of Exchange development, which was very unusual for Microsoft to actually have our major corporate customers literally in an office for 6-8 weeks, trying our product in their environments. They'd replicate their environment, they'd come in, they'd try to make sure all their management tools worked. Very unusual, very, very customer focused. So for Exchange to come out and do a customer focused blog just made tons of sense.
I actually asked several people, because I'd done it personally, but there was no product blog at the company. That's another important context. So the idea of a product blog didn't make sense, because what's the voice for the product? What's that mean? I remember talking to a guy who did personal blogging who said, you'll get 2 people to write for it. So this was 2004, and let's just be clear, it's still going today. And this is another thing I'm actually pretty proud of. However, the entire reason I really wanted to write the blog was because I wanted to tell the story of Bedlam DL3. Which was the very first big reply all storm in 97, I think.
Yes.
And Larry happened to be the person. I'm like, Larry, can you please write this up for me? This would be amazing. The entire purpose of the Exchange blog, I'm not joking, was I just wanted to tell this story. And we'd tell other stuff too, and that would be great. And so I got Larry to write up the Me Too story. And like, this was before the New York Times did like some full-page article. It's like, should you reply all this to, and they said no, and it was just the word no. So before these things were known, it was just such a cool way to, and he explained all these technical details about why it happens.
It was so much fun, because it was, the social elements were cool, but the technical back-end stuff was to me what made it really fun and interesting, was because it was all, there was a bug in the message transfer agent that if it crashed under certain circumstances, then it would replay all the messages. So the load on the system just kept on spiraling, and it just got worse and worse the more the time went on, and it was under the covers. I actually love the fact, and I don't know, I'm sorry I'm jumping in. One point I mentioned how there were many gigabytes of data being transferred around in all of these email messages, because the message was really short, but the number of recipients was very large. And these were like a megabyte of message, and then there were gigabytes, 20, 30, 40 gigabytes of data going on. And I'm like, nowadays I read this article and I'm like, oh, 20 gigabytes, how quaint.
Yes.
Oh, that's so sweet. 20 gigabytes, oh.
That's not even a fortnight.
Oh.
The other thing that's kind of fun about the Exchange blog, and this is super niche Exchange humor, but as someone who's always loved wordplay, which is why I like the DOS Vader, we named it "You Had Me at eHello," because eHello was the beginning of an SMTP conversation, and also Jerry Maguire had come out recently, and "You Had Me at hello." Anyway, an MVP for Exchange came up with that name, and it is just, to this day, one of those perfect moments. So really, really love that. So like the product team used that a ton over the years, but it all kind of started with telling the story of the intersection of human and technology. Because the tech stuff, but oh my God, the human factors are funny. And so every time there's a new Bedlam, someone tags, me and Larry and be like, oh my God, it's happening. So leading on from that, skipping ahead in time.
Oh, and by the way, sorry, I forgot to mention, you and I both forgot to mention, yesterday was the anniversary.
It was.
28, I think?
I can't count.
Whatever, the person on the old timers list on Facebook sent it. But yesterday was actually the anniversary of Bedlam DL3.
Yep. So what a momentous. Yeah. So speaking of Bedlam, in 2014, one of my random stories is I read this hilarious Tumblr called Ladies Against Humanity that was just using Cards Against Humanity about being a woman, and I was just dying laughing at some of the stuff they had in there. I won't go into those details, but so a few friends and my husband, who also worked at Microsoft, at work, we were like, wouldn't it be funny if, there would be a cool game here? And so they came over one night, and I had like yellow legal pad, and we were just writing out ideas. And the whole concept was, okay, it's a fun evening. Let's see if it's a playable game, because we weren't sure when we started. A lot of things are funny, but you had to be there. So we wrote down a bunch of things, and then I went to Kinko's one day and I got them printed out, and then I'm like, I'm gonna schedule a play test. And so I got people in conference rooms and scheduled. The very first version of this game that I created, because I didn't know what to call it at the time, was Microsoft Against Humanity. And then I thought, that might not be a good idea. So then I did Cards Against Microsoft. And then I decided that also wasn't a good idea. So I did a poll asking for suggestions for what to name it. One of the suggestions was WinFS. And then, of course, especially, I can't believe I didn't come up with this, but someone suggested Bedlam, and I was like, oh, this is so perfect. So long story short, I made a card game called Bedlam for working at Microsoft. And that was like 2014. So by like the summer of 2014, I'd done enough like Kinko print out place. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a legitimately funny playable game. And in particular, one of the things that happen when you play it is there's the card text on the top, and then there's the subtext on the bottom. And it's a way for people to kind of cross-pollinate and tell those stories and share that tribal knowledge over time. So like if you play with a mixed age or experience level group, someone will play a card and people are like, oh my God, that's hilarious. And someone's like, what is that? And then the story comes out. So it becomes this prop. Also, you can mix the cards with Cards Against Humanity. And that is a different type of game. But it's really fun in certain audiences. So it all started out for Microsoft. So this black card was about the standards of business conduct. And most of the cards are real, like a thing happened. There are actual stories behind every one of them. And then eventually it became clear that there's Microsoft stuff and then there's just techie stuff. And so I refactored it because two of my favorite cards are adding an abstraction layer and removing an abstraction layer. And so I refactored it to be a core game just for techies. And then there's this Microsoft Employee Expansion Pack and then other things on top of that. Well, somewhat related to that, skipping ahead to this past year, I actually vibe coded a version of Bedlam. So if anyone wants to play it online, you can do that for free just because it's fun, because I'm retired now, so this is what I do with my free time. And it's just a way to just kind of like share. So even when we were planning this event and figuring out what content we were going to do, at one point I put together a combination of 2 cards, which was, if I ever leave Microsoft, the thing I'm going to miss most is this. And then the answer card was, meetings where the first 10 minutes are spent getting the projector to work. And it's just like, and then you can share a link to that and then vote on. So anyway, if you ever want to see some of those old cards, write your own, take screenshots, it's there. It's just a fun thing. And I just love it because it became a storytelling tool for kind of telling the history of Microsoft and how these things come together. So the next section from there, each of us, similar to the kind of moments of pride, we were talking about things that we all have a story about, and t-shirts is definitely part of it. So each of us, and I have 2 actually, this is when you're the person who creates the slides, you can just do things. But I have 2 t-shirts that are kind of like special memories to me. So this one was, I designed this t-shirt because I knew just enough Photoshop to be dangerous. I wasn't actually good at it, but I just like played around with it. And Exchange 2007, just because it was, 007, we're like, oh, we got to do a team t-shirt. So we did this t-shirt, Exchange 2007 from Redmond with love. And the team loved it. And, we were like 500 or 600 people at the time. And the exec who ran Exchange loved it so much, he sent it to Chris Capicella, who ran marketing for Microsoft, and was like, how about we use this as the theme for the product? And Chris was like, thanks, we're going in a different direction. But I still love that, and every time I see that shirt, I think about it. Another Exchange shirt, because I did a lot of shirts back at the time. This was actually designed by Mike Forney, who's a designer on the Exchange team at the time. It was called Exchange Labs, and this is the beginning of the thing that turned into Office 365. We took Exchange, this on-premise product, and we're like, we need to make it scale to be an internet service that can power the backbone, the future of the company, and email more than that. And so he put together this design, and I just always loved it, because when you look back on it now, it might seem that some of these steps were obvious. Oh, of course you should have done that. Of course that was the right thing to do. This was incredibly controversial. We put Exchange out there as the service, and people who were PMs on the product team were now suddenly getting support calls in the middle of the night with pagers. Like, I actually was at my desk once, and someone had called 882-8080, the Microsoft Exchange, and had an Outlook support question, and it got routed to me. And I was like, how did that happen? But this is a different era when you're an internet service. So it just, to me, kind of signifies that transition period where we went from taking this product that was on-premise, the IT managed everything, to hosted in the cloud by Microsoft employees at scale. I also remember around the same era, I went to this meeting to learn about this new thing called Azure. I don't know. I guess that thing turned out too. So that was another t-shirt memory.
It's going to be a big deal.
And?
Yes, so this is a dorky cardboard crown. Not very interesting, but in Windows 95, we had a t-shirt contest. The idea was, come wear a cool t-shirt, and we had a bunch of categories: rattiest t-shirt, coolest t-shirt, whatever. And I won coolest t-shirt, but it wasn't because my t-shirt was any cool. When I came to Microsoft, I went to a Catholic high school. We had to wear a coat and tie to school every day. And so my wardrobe that wasn't like sweatpants consisted of coats and ties and dress shirts. And so that's what I wore to work every day, because it was the only decent clothes I had that you didn't sleep in. And so that became my shtick. It's always good to be like a cartoon character where there's a costume you wear every day. In a way, it cuts down on the amount of thinking you have to do, but on the other hand, you sort of kind of get stuck with it. But anyway, so I was the guy who wore a suit to work every day, and so for the T-shirt day, I still wore my suit. Like, I'm not stupid. But then I wore a T-shirt over it. I don't even remember what T-shirt it was. It wasn't a very interesting one, but I won the best T-shirt award, not so much because of the T-shirt, but because I won the presentation. We had constructed like a little runway. You walk down, you do your thing, and I like totally vogued it. I was sashaying, and I like finished up by taking off my necktie and whipping it into the crowd. I totally had them like whipped into a frenzy. And the prize was a dorky cardboard crown. which I couldn't find in time for this presentation, but at least I found a photo of a dorky cardboard crown. It looks just like this. Like, I could probably just go and buy another one and pretend it was the same one. No one would know except me and now everybody on the internet. So yeah, so that's the story of not just T-shirt memories, but also dumbest award.
And mine, speaking of, so this is actually from Exchange early days. Exchange was designed as an X400 messaging system because X400 was the future of messaging. And we knew that was a big deal and we were going to be modern and cutting edge. Yeah. And then somewhere around the middle of Exchange 4, first release, the internet took off. And all of a sudden, X400 kind of became blasé or old hat, and the internet was the new hotness. So
X400 was the information superhighway.
No, the internet was the information superhighway, and this was to commemorate that we were doing an SMTP connector so that we would be able to talk to internet messaging over the information superhighway, because that's what they called the internet back then. It was the information superhighway. They wrote books about it and everything. But
I heard speeches about it.
we did, and because this
I think
was
there's like
Exchange,
a tidal wave.
there was a memo at some point or something like that. Yeah. To commemorate this, because Exchange was Exchange, we decided that naked email that was the appropriate imagery for messaging on the
I mean,
internet.
it's a T-shirt. It's never going to be seen by other
No,
people,
nobody's ever going to see this.
Yeah.
Hilariously, I thought to try to find this photo, I chased down looking, because I knew it had been posted online recently, and started searching through the Facebook groups and stuff where I could find it. And eventually I finally did. In a post from 2019 to the Microsoft Old Timers group from some guy named Larry Osterman. Apparently we found it in the closet when we were cleaning it out. I took a picture of it, posted it online, and then completely forgot that I was the one who posted the picture. Oh well, anyway, but as I said, this entire idea of pointing, and when you're talking about moving the Exchange to the cloud, well, I'm like, yeah, well, this was putting Exchange on the internet, connecting it up. So,
Scary
yeah,
times.
it was terrifying. It truly
I
was
remember
terrifying.
in the early days of Exchange, and I filed a bug against Exchange because their RFC 822 connector, the thing that you worked so hard on, was not following the spec quite right. And so I filed a bug saying, look, here's the header, boom, boom, boom. Here's the spec. Chapter blah, blah, blah says you have to quote this character, you have to format it just this way, and you didn't quite get it right. And the bug was resolved postponed. And the explanation was, we are still evaluating whether we want to support RFC 822.
I really thought you were going to go to a different bug, because I didn't actually work on the internet connector.
Oh no, then there's the IMAP bug.
Thank you. That was where I thought you were going to go. That was, oh, whoops.
Yeah. So I was writing, as you can tell from the fact that I filed a bug quoting RFC 822, I read RFCs. And so I was, for some stupid reason, writing my own mail client based on the IMAP RFC.
Oh, it gets better.
I learned a lot from writing this mail. It was written in Scheme. But first, since there was no Scheme system for Windows, first I had to write Scheme, which I did. Anyway, so I'm testing my app, and it gets to a point where no matter what command I issue, I get an error message back with a picture of a dog. And I'm like, huh? So I issue like, okay, RSCT, reset the system. Picture of a dog. Okay, like the only command that worked at that point was sign out, like close connection. Any other command, any attempt you make is like, okay, CD to the root. Nope, dog. And so I filed a bug saying, every time I issue a command, I get a picture of a dog. And as I think Larry chased it down and figured out that...
chased it down? I knew exactly what you did.
Because you made the dog.
No. The tester, that was Delilah the Spastic Spaniel.
Delilah the Spastic Spaniel.
And she was the dog of the test lead for the IMAP server. And we actually built our Easter egg because we could, well, as a feature. We had a product spec, we had a test plan, we got it approved, and we built
A fully
legitimate feature of the Easter egg. And Raymond happened to trip into the Easter egg that nobody was ever supposed to find unless you knew the magic. Well, Raymond managed to find the Easter egg.
Totally by accident.
Totally by accident. We had one each for NNTP, POP3, and IMAP. It all depended on a certain sequence of commands that you had to issue in order.
No one will ever do these things.
Nobody would ever do these
Unless
things.
you knew what to do. There's no way you
Exactly.
could ever go like up, down, left, right, up, down, down, right?
Yes,
like that's just
exactly.
crazy.
Never. So yeah, you found our Easter egg by accident, and
Well, and then there was a bug in the Easter egg,
then there was a bug in the Easter egg. Yes.
and that the Easter egg poisoned the connection, and the only thing it would do from then on was give you Easter eggs.
Because you got to the Easter egg part, you were done.
I miss
You-
Easter
when
eggs.
you
Nobody
didn't get-
continued using the connection after these are like, yay, I got the Easter egg, bug fix.
Why would you ever?
So this was in April of '94. Eventually people realized that I wore a suit to work every day, and they're like, hang on a second, that's been going on for 4 years. Maybe it's a trend. And so it started out as this was informal thing. He's like, you know what, I'll wear a suit if Raymond doesn't. And there was enough traction there that we decided to make a thing out of it. So it became Make Raymond Wear Normal Clothes Day. So I'm in there somewhere. I did not even own a Hawaiian shirt. I had to go out and buy a Hawaiian shirt. Everybody else wore a suit of some kind. Most of them wore business suits. I remember one of my coworkers, she was like, I've never worn this. My mom insisted that if I got a real job, I'd have to get a business suit. I think the only time I wore this business suit was for my interview for this job. And so she was happy that she actually got to wear it again. So it got 2 uses. Most people wore suits. Some people wore military uniform, which I consider like, when you make one of these types of things, you end up playing rules lawyer a lot. So we had to clarify that school uniforms are acceptable because it was in spirit that, I was wearing my school uniform, continuing to wear my school uniform to work. So school uniforms acceptable, military uniforms acceptable, birthday suits not acceptable, swimsuits not acceptable. And so you'll see in fact, the woman wearing the red jacket, she's the one who borrowed my launched Windows 95 launch ticket and decided not to use it. She won for best Catholic school uniform.
They programmed the woman in the red sweater, just like in The Matrix.
That's right.
Meanwhile, a few years after this is when I interviewed for Microsoft, and I dared to wear khakis, and I tucked my shirt in, and I heard no end of crap about it that entire day about how I dressed up for my interview.
Because you tucked your shirt in?
With khakis. I mean, like, what is
Crazy.
this?
One of my friends who joined the Windows 95 team after this event, he came to interview to work on the team on this day. He did not know that we were having a dress-up day. So he shows up, and everybody's wearing a suit. And he's like, man, the people in Windows really do things differently.
So I'm sorry, I want to throw one in on this one. My first day, I actually showed up in a 3-piece suit because that was what you did on your first day at work. And person across the hall from me, Paul Butsy, looks at me, he's like, you're wearing a That was the last time I wore a suit to work because Paul made it very clear to me that that was probably not the most appropriate attire for me to wear.
I don't know. That would have encouraged me.
Well, following the herd, what can I say? So, speaking of attire, 90s were a time when public shaming was like a thing. And this was me in the early 1990s wearing the goat horns of shame, which you were instructed to wear whenever you broke the build. And I think I may have broken the build enough times that some of the leaders on the NT team decided they were just going to permanently give it to me. Just, Larry, they're yours. You just have it. But anyway, that is the infamous Larry wearing goat horns.
So in the Internet Explorer project, the dev lead was famous for wearing Hawaiian shirts to work every day. And they decided that, you know what we could do? We could like have somebody who like really comes through, you know, does a really good job, saves the team, you know, fixes a critical bug. As a reward, we'll hang one of the dev lead's Hawaiian shirts in his office as sort of a banner, like saying, you know, American League West champions, I fixed a bug. And they thought this would be great. Like people would like be really proud of having the dev lead shirt hanging in their office. Yeah, so what they didn't consider was asking any of the developers if they would appreciate having their boss's shirt hanging in their office. And because if they did, the answer would have been uniformly no. And so they bestowed the congratulatory dev lead shirt upon one of the members of the team, and that person reluctantly accepted it. And it's not clear what happened in between, but eventually the meaning got flipped. And it no longer became a token of you did a really great job, but rather it means that congratulations, you just made a mistake even worse than the mistake made by the person who is giving it to you. And so the rule was that now you were in possession of the Hawaiian shirt of shame until somebody messed up worse than you.
That's an interesting incentive structure.
Yes. So again, this was the period when public shaming was considered an acceptable form of motivation.
Yes.
All right, we've got just a few minutes left, and we're getting to the end. From goat horns to horses. So this is a picture from the Kentucky Derby in 2012. And if you notice the horse on the right, and you zoom into his pants, it says Windows Phone. And this is a horse named Hanson, who was actually the top competitor at the time, and the guy who owned the horse Hanson was a big fan of Windows Phone. So he literally called up someone at Microsoft, it's like, I got a horse. Do you guys want, he's gonna be racing in the Derby. Do you wanna sponsor him? And this was a 9-month period of my career where I worked in marketing, and it was 9 months because I changed jobs twice in a year because it was not for me. But I happened to be there in that 9 months, and they're like, Casey, you take this. And so it was surprisingly affordable. And we got some free tickets to the Derby, and like it got some nice little press. It was cute, really fun. And then it also got some other press, like the guy in Gizmodo said he bet a lot of money on the horse to loss. But the thing I loved.
Is this prophetic?
All right, well, this is 2012. It was a good year at the time. But the thing I actually really love about this, because Hanson did great for the first. He came out so early, so strong. He was there early. It's like classic Microsoft. We're often very early for something. And then, didn't kind of make it to the end of that. But I just always love this because no one believed it. And we paid for photos. We wore some fancy hats. And someone somewhere has the jockey's pants. All right. A couple more things near the end. Ninja Cat, we're not going to tell the whole story here because actually I wrote it up on Raymond's blog in 2016. But the short story is there was a slide deck for an internal presentation. As it was being told, I was getting emails from people who knew I'd created the slide saying, oh, I need a t-shirt of that slide. And when people say, I need a t-shirt of that slide, it's like, there's something going on there. So long story short, I wrote it up. Tom Warren wrote this really wonderful article, and then for the Windows 10 launch event that year, the Garage crew, as part of a hackathon, a bunch of folks created a 7-foot-tall Ninja Cat. Now, notice a key word in Tom's thing, fire breathing. Because it's the Garage, they also wired it up for flames. And Oh my God, it was the most amazing thing. We didn't get to use the flames. We had to very carefully stage it, but it was such a cool representation of what the whole concept of the Ninja Cat was, what people create with it. And the fact that they were able to create this and then wire it up with flame, and then there was like a Windows phone app, you'd hit a button and then it would start flaming. Couple more things related to that. The left-hand picture is from the Denmark office of Microsoft with a, I don't know, 25-foot inflatable statue of the Ninja Cat that someone made for fun, and they blew it up and they had it in the lobby. Right-hand side is Thomas Middleditch. It was for the Imagine Cup that year, where I got a message from Satya's chief of staff saying, can I get a t-shirt? Because he's going to do a photo op with Thomas Middleditch. We want to wear Ninja Cat, which was really fun. And then the next year, actually, both Ninja Cat and Bedlam, I basically had a wall of the company store that was like my random side projects. So I joke that like I also did work, I did. But like somehow the side projects kind of took on a life of their own. And so I just had that picture to represent.
My daughter still wears her Ninja Cat socks.
Like, you know, this thing. I didn't make the socks, but yeah.
No.
But it was
well,
a cool.
we got to the company store though. It's not, so somebody did.
They're still there now?
They are? I don't know.
know.
This was years ago.
Okay.
We got her the socks years ago, but she's.
They enjoyed it very much. By the way, I made sure that they were sold at cost. The whole point of this was not a profit motive, but it's neat. And then the last slide, the three of us did this nerdiest game show ever for Channel 9. So if folks wanted to hear some more random stories, as well as literally the nerdiest show you've ever
Oh my God,
seen.
it was so nerdy. It was so nerdy.
I should point out that during this game, in the beginning, I didn't realize how competitive it was going to be. And
Wait,
so
who won?
I'm not going to say.
No.
But so
no,
I
no.
actually had answers and held back, figuring I would like share the wealth. And then about a quarter of the way into the game, I realized I'm going to lose this thing.
Yeah, because Lady Cutthroat here, you know, she's vicious.
I'm an angel. Anyway, it's a really fun, I'm not usually in front of the camera, I'm more of a behind the camera person. And they did a really, really great job kind of bringing together a bunch of old Microsoft stories and absolute nerdery, like, you know, brought out a Visual Studio box and how many CDs
How many
and
discs
tapes,
were in this? Yeah.
discs in it. So it's another really fun thing to see if you want to catch up on that type of content. And that's all we have for today.
Yeah.
So.
All right, so thank you very much. That was very entertaining.